My name is Lamika Carroll, and you're watching Turn Up the Volume.
Hey, I'm Nadia. I'm DJ. Hey, I'm Seth. And you're watching Turn Up the Volume. Turn up the volume. Turn up the volume. Turn up. Turn up. Hit the wall. Seth, put the pause.
Hey, what's happening? This is Donte, Carroll, host of Turn Up the Volume podcast. And listen, I want to let y'all know something. You can follow us on many different platforms. You can follow me on Facebook at Donte J. Carroll Sr. You can also follow me on Twitter at Donte J. Carroll, no apostrophe. Also, I'm on Instagram at Donte Carroll, all one word, no apostrophe. And lastly, you want to follow me on YouTube at Donte Carroll because I post all of my episodes and post all of my shows from the podcast on my YouTube page. So if you want to continue to stay connected, make sure you like, share, and subscribe and follow me on all of my social media platforms. And remember, until next time, keep that volume turned up. Peace. Be blessed. What's happening? Good evening, everybody. I am your host, Donte Carroll, and I'm here with yet another edition of Turn Up the Volume podcast. I'm excited to be here with you guys today. We got a hot topic that needs to be talked about in our community, and the climate that's going on in our country. I mean, looking at the Derek Chauvin trial, I call it that for a reason. I know some people are calling it the George Floyd trial, but George Floyd is not on trial. Derek Chauvin is on trial. So the Derek Chauvin trial, just seeing everything that's happening, seeing our people, our African American brothers and sisters who are going on that stand testifying and really throwing bricks in so many different ways through white supremacy's windows is just so amazing. And then here we got another topic that we're talking about tonight, voter suppression that's taking place, which is really kicking off in Georgia, because Georgia is on the map right now. Georgia is really being seen for everything that's been going on. I mean, we're going to talk about it all. We're going to talk about the voter suppression. We're going to talk about Representative Park Cannon and what happened with her. And I have two phenomenal brothers here with me today that's going to help talk and help me to unravel what's happening and what's going on. First person that I have here is my brother James Brooks, political analyst. This is his first time here on Turn Up the Volume with us. Welcome, James. How you doing, brother?
Hello, brother. Thank you for having me on your amazing show.
Thank you. Also, another brother I have is a brother I met through seminary. Me and his brother very close. His brother actually was here Martin Luther King Day. Rudy Lee Daniel III is his brother, and I got his brother here, Trey Daniel. How you doing, brother? Fellow seminarian. He's actually on the ground in Georgia.
Yeah,
how
it's
you
good
doing,
to
Trey?
be here. It's good to be here. Just excited about this topic, man, and really just hope that we can shed some light on some things that not only will impact, of course, Georgia, but also impact the nation moving forward. So I'm glad to be here.
Yes, I'm glad to have both of y'all here. Thank you. Welcome. So Trey, I want to start with you. So the last couple of weeks, we saw what was going on in Georgia. We've seen, the voter suppression, the laws being changed. So you're on the ground there in Georgia, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. You're on the ground in Georgia.
Absolutely, yes.
Right. So help us to unpack exactly what's going on, what you've been witnessing, who are you working with now down there in Georgia? So kind of lay the foundation for us before we really dig into what's happening.
Yeah, as you said and mentioned, Deontay, we met. My brother and I, of course, went to the illustrious Howard University School of Divinity. So I am a minister by trade. I am working in a position of a youth minister and a youth pastor in Atlanta, Georgia. Also, though, with that, my ministry has been social justice ministry. So once I moved here, I wanted to find myself very active in the political game that is happening here, the infrastructure that is happening here. As we all know, in 2020, Georgia was very influential in the election outturn. Also, moving into 2021, race for senator, we elected Raphael Warnock, who is the very first African American senator here in Georgia. But yeah, I've been working with the, and I don't know if I should preface this or not, but I've been working on the grounds with the Democratic Party of Georgia.
Okay.
As I mentioned, working in the general election with the presidency and also working with the senatorial runoff as well.
Okay, so you've been working in Georgia. You laid the foundation. You've been working with the also the Democratic side on things. Now, the laws that went into place very recently, I believe it was last week, if I'm not mistaken. The laws that went into place, very strange, but it was very strange. You can't pass out water. You can't pass out food.
Right.
Why? I don't understand why. I don't understand why.
Man, I would say that it is a scare tactic.
Okay.
Someone who is born in the North, someone who voted first time in the North, someone who is very much involved with the politics of the North. Moving down here in Atlanta, it is very different. Number one, if you're anywhere up north, if your viewership is up north, then they know that voting, the day of voting, is very important. You even get that day off from work. Here in Atlanta, no, they don't look at it as such. They really try to suppress you in any type of way that they can, in any form and fashion that they can. So you don't even get voting election day off from work.
Wow.
Also, not only that, I was working with the Democratic Party of Georgia, and we got money. We wanted to get people out there to vote, and we were handing out T-shirts, giving out free food. Beknownst to me, the political, I guess the people who ran the precincts and different things of that nature, someone actually called the police on us, man. Can
Wow.
you and really had the state trooper come out there and measure the steps, because you can't be within a certain amount of distance from a voting precinct. So they came out there, measured the steps. The officer or the trooper were actually cool. It was a woman. It was an African American woman. She knew why we were out there. She wanted to see us turn the state blue. And of course, she didn't give us any grievance, but the nature and the understanding and, just how embedded this white supremacist understanding of politics, of, these different ills or social norms, I would even say, is very much embedded down here in the South. So yeah, water, once they saw that they had the highest number of turnout voting ever, water has been thrown out the board. Food has been thrown out the board. Of course, waiting for someone or holding a placeholders have been thrown out of the board, and amongst other changes as well. And I'm pretty sure we'll get into that. But yeah, man, it's a shock to me, someone who hasn't been born to this system. So to see it is pretty much nothing but a scare tactic.
James. So James, it's very interesting. You and I have talked prior to you coming on, the show today, and Michelle Alexander, she has a book. She talks about the new Jim Crow, and she talked about it in the form of the prison systems being the new Jim Crow. Let me ask you this, because I was reading something about the Washington Post. They were trying to say that the voter suppression that's taking place is not the new Jim Crow. Is this voter suppression? Is this the new Jim Crow? Because I feel like it's Jim Crow in a suit and tie, right? They're not wearing the hoods anymore, but Jim Crow is more so making sure they put referendums on the ballot and changing laws and finding very subtle ways to suppress. So, is this the new Jim Crow?
Well, let me first say this. I think before we go any further, it's important, in my opinion, to define what words are. Because see, what happens is America is a country that they use, or we use words in a particular way to mean and to show our intent of what we really mean. So when you think about suppression, it's defined as an act or instance of suppressing the state of being or consciousness, intentional exclusion of a person's thought or feeling. So this right here, in my opinion, is exactly what the definition is. Suppression is excluding conscious thought or feeling. And in what we're talking about the vote. So
Mm-hmm.
your great grandmama, Trey Daniels' great grandmama and grandfather and our other ancestors, these are the things that they fought for, and they went over the Edmund Pettus Bridge to make sure that this was resolved, only to be met with water cannons and dogs. So this is another form of suppression.
Right.
It's another form of voter suppression because some folk are uncomfortable, in my opinion, with other folks' thoughts or feelings when they go to the polls to vote. So this is another form of voter suppression. You could define it as a Jim Crow because back then there, of course, were the unbalanced issue of sharecropping, where
Right.
you had black folk that were working uh, underpaid, undervalued, underprivileged to hold on to what they had to hold on to. But of course, uh, you know, we were beat out of that because of certain laws. Jim Crow uh, is no different than the school. We had state troopers. We're the only race that had state troopers to walk uh, black children to a schoolyard. Not
Mm-hmm.
only there, but don't forget Boston. Boston had not long ago a suppression where they did not want folk to go to their schools, certain folk to go to public schools. So this is just a continuation, I believe, of things that we need to address. And I respect and appreciate, what everybody's doing down in Georgia. I think the biggest thing that we could have done is had that victory with the two senators down there. I think Senator Warnock is pressing on and putting his finger on the pressure point by calling out corporations in Georgia to find out what y'all going to do about it. So I think this is definitely a different form of suppression and a new form of Jim Crowism. I do agree with that.
Now, see, here's the thing, right? And so it's a new form of suppression. And this is what I want to ask you, because I know you on the ground in Georgia. Do you talk to a lot of the senior citizens who were around, like, back in the '60s and the '50s? Who experienced what it was like to be told that in order to vote you got to count how many jelly beans are in a jar, stupid stuff like that, right? And so when you talk to them, what are they saying about this new form of voter suppression? Because it's like the overall goal that they have is to suppress the vote, is to stop people of color, minorities to vote, right? And so what are they saying about this new form of voter suppression? Are they, is it like reaching back in the past? Like, what are they saying to you?
Yeah, they're constantly just reminding myself and younger voters to let them know, like, hey, this is just only a way for them to try to turn us around. They seen, a lot of, I would say, a lot of the elderly people that I've come in contact with, whether it be members of my church or members of the community in which I serve in, have been really just taken aback by it and just like, wow. Right. So it's not the simple fact that they are still on this high of, hey, we did it, we have the first African American woman vice president, we have the first African American senator. No, they're really still understanding that, hey, this is America, and this voting law that or bill that has been passed in Georgia is just another step for them to see, like, hey, America is rearing its ugly head once again. But they're telling us to keep pushing and keep doing what we're doing. A lot of I would say, like I said, the elderly are really up in arms to the fact that now they're asking for another form of identification to mail in their ballot, right? They're asking also for, I think you have to be a resident for an amount of certain months or years or something like that as
Right.
well with this new law change. It's surprising for me, Deontay. It's really surprising for me.
And it's crazy because okay, so one of the things that they changed was the fact that I guess the voting the mail in boxes or what have you. Now they move them inside now, right? And so you can only access those from 9 to 5. What about people that have to go to work? What about
Right.
people that have to go to work? And then you can't even mail in your parents. I see James, you nod your head. Like you can't even mail your parents mail-in ballots who are sick, who can't move. Even if you have children who go to other universities, but they're still technically as a resident of the state of Georgia. Like how does that affect us, James? How does that affect you know us going forward? Because before, like even when I think about the pandemic, in the pandemic, you can mail in your ballot, you can do these different things, and now they are really trying to lock down. And honestly, and I'm gonna go to you, James, because I mean you my political analyst on this here. So I honestly feel like this is really a backlash from what happened in Georgia in the last election, right? I feel like this is backlash, and so because they're upset, the right, they're more so upset now. They feel like, well, we got to lock down, and so what do we really need to be looking at and paying attention to as it relates to what the overall motive is from the right?
Absolutely. I think the motive is actually, I think it's kind of patently obvious. I think that some folk, and everybody's like this, some folk could have a problem with change. And I think because of the landscape of the election, uh, we just elected Biden. It was a close election, but I think the American people spoke. But I think one of the things I want to touch on is this. I think one of the things that we may need to actually do and really think about is on this road of trying to be conscious and have a fundamental statement and a footprint in this movement is this. What if we reached out and included in this movement not only Latinx, but our
Okay.
Asian brothers and sisters, and everyone else that's going to be impacted in this, and start a movement. And this is what I was getting at. Watch this. The question becomes is, how can all of us as Americans, right? We see the same thing, right? But we come to a different conclusion. How
Right.
is that? We see the same oppression throughout all of the communities, all of the minority communities, but we all come to a different conclusion. So that's where I think we need to start. Like, why is that? And I think we're not as far off as we actually think we are. I think we're closer, in context of our struggles collectively than individually. Now, watch this. What I think for voter suppression, we can't come to a different conclusion on this.
Okay.
We got to realize that it's going to impact all of us. And the great thing about, I think, this time and moment is that it's so fresh and it's so rare and it's so different until we've seen with the Black Lives Matter movement and the protest, even over the George Floyd and all the other, I will call them freedom fighters that have gone along before us, the Breonna Taylors. We've all seen all of us come together and rally over an issue. We can't lose that momentum or that movement. I believe down in the Georgia end of things, if Nike has tennis shoes down in Georgia and we have them on, then that we can start there. What does Nike have to say about the voter suppression movement? If I like to go to Home Depot to take care of my garden needs or even to get a light bulb and they are silent on this, then I can't go to Home Depot to get my light bulbs or my gardening activities. I think if this is their hub and we fly all over the world, including, the Caribbean, we go for our vacations, and some folk may even find themselves down in Miami for college weekend.
Right.
off Delta, then that's a question that we have to face and put Delta front and center about what are you guys going to do about it since we are on this side of it. And I think that's a good way to start. And I think it will diminish the whole idea of water not being at the polls. I mean, think about it. If my 90-year-old grandmama went to the polls, and my folks are from Mississippi, if my 90-year-old grandmama went to the polls and she needed some water, you mean to tell me because of her sacrifice, she's not afforded a drink of water to cast her vote? That's insane. And again, it goes to the idea of suppression, someone trying to get away from or not attempting to uh, put in context your feelings or your views on things that impact all of us. So I think this is a great time, a great movement for us to do this. Hats off to brother Trey down there in Georgia, who's on the front lines. But I think this is just the beginning.
Okay, so there's a lot that you said, James. One of the things you started talking about the companies like Home Depot and companies like that, these multi-million-dollar companies, who us as African Americans, we go to these companies every day to buy different things, put money in their pockets, But one of the things that I think could actually help in our plight, because this is our plight, African Americans, minorities, we have a plight right now. They're trying to stop us from voting. And here's another thing, like people really say, well, there's no need of voting. Well, if your vote was not that powerful, then why are they trying to take it? Why are they trying to suppress it? Why are they trying to put limitations on it and restrictions and regulations around, you voting? Because they understand the vote. And I think the problem is a lot of times when we think about voting, we only think about one particular thing, and that's who's going to be in the White House. We don't think about our judges. We don't think about our senators, our governors, our mayors, people who run our local areas and our local jurisdictions. Because watch this, right? The person that's going to really affect you the most is your governor, is your mayor. Right? Who's in charge? Your council members, your councilmen, right? And so that's why your sheriffs, and so that's why it's important to vote. And I think we have to really re-emphasize that to our community and to our people, that when you're voting, you're not just voting at the top, at the top of the ballot, who's going to be in the White House between Trump and Biden, but you got to think about everything, that's going on down that ballot. And so when I look at, when we talk about the companies now, the companies who we're talking about. So Trey, let me ask you this, because what I've noticed is, and I've been reading a lot of articles, a lot of companies now are being vocal after things have been signed into law and signed into place. Why? So how are you guys, I guess, clapping back at these companies down there in Georgia? Like, what's happening? Because I'm pretty sure there's a fight going on and there's some kind of back and forth. So how is the African American community, or I guess minorities in general, clapping back at these companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of them, as we've seen with Senator Warnock, we're calling them out. We're calling them out. We're asking them to not only be present, when it's affecting their dollars or when it's affecting their stock shares, but we're also asking them to be very much present and very much vocal when it is affecting, local elections, when it is affecting minority groups or communities that aren't necessarily mainstream and main stage, right? I would say Coca-Cola has been one of those companies that does and that has been contributing to the fund or contributing to the movement, I would say. But majority of these companies, it's a tug and pull, because everyone wants to be politically correct during this season, during this time of how things are going right now. But yeah, they can definitely do more. And I'm right there with you, James. I'm right there with you as you are trying to emphasize their voices, because they matter. We've seen the greatest number of turnout of voters, and that is due to the NBA shutting down. That is due to the Voting Matters with the NFL campaign and having Alicia Keys there and different things of that nature. We're seeing literally how their influence matters to us, how their influence matters to the votes, how influences matter also to laws being changed and different things of that nature. So they can't be silent. So yeah, that kind of answers your question.
Now, before I switch, so one of the things, because I remember last year, right around the height of the pandemic, and I'm a person that at the time really had just started getting into stocks and buying stocks and small stocks and things of that nature. And I had started talking to my own kids about it. My kids are 6, 7, and 8. My boys, and I was I would make them tell me what a stock was before they can get a snack, stuff like that, just to get them aware and acquainted in terms of what it means to own a small portion of a company. And so there is power in our dollars. We're talking about these companies.
Yes.
And if these companies are not going to represent, and at least have some sense of humanity, right? Then we need to start pulling our dollars out of these companies. If Home Depot is not going to give a 2 cent about the plight of African Americans, then let's start pulling our dollars and let's stop shopping there. Same thing for Wendy's, same thing for McDonald's, same thing for Chick-fil-A. Anybody can get it. Nobody's off limits in my book. I'm being real. Anybody can get it, because the reality is, when black folks understand the power of their money, right? Because the reality is, if you look at our communities, even in DC, you got all kind of Chinese food shops, on our corners, right? Because they know that we gonna spend our money. But what happens if we stop spending our money because they don't respect us? Just to give an example, right? And so the same thing on a bigger level when we talking about Home Depot. And so if you're not going to look after us, when we fund your business, when we put money in your pockets, when we make sure that you stay in the Fortune 500 companies, amongst those in the Fortune 500 companies, then we're going to start pulling our dollars. And I look at it can work. In my opinion, it can work, especially when I think about Georgia, because who's from Georgia? MLK, Martin Luther King, one of my favorite, people in history to look at, right? And I think about the MIA, the Montgomery Improvement Association, when they kicked off the Montgomery bus boycott, right? One of the things that they did, they stopped riding the buses. And what happened when they stopped riding the buses? The buses in Montgomery were not making money. Why? Because majority of your customers were African Americans who were riding your bus just to get to work, get to school, go to the grocery store, things of that nature. And so they started carpooling. And guess what happened? The bus company took a hit financially. And now they wanted to start trying to come together and try to come up with some kind of plan of, well, what can we do to get them riding back the bus? And so if we still had that same mindset, James, if we still had that same mindset in 2021, here it is. We got all kind of social media. We got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we struggle with putting together a community meeting. But these jokers back in 55, all they had was a piece of paper passed around saying, "Don't ride the bus in Montgomery." And everybody complied, right? But why is it that I'm just trying to understand why we struggle so much? We got so many resources, James, but we struggle.
Yeah, I think so. There's another argument that I've been hearing percolating, and it's this.
Okay.
There are minorities that work for these corporations, the Home Depots and the Coca-Colas. However, to your point, even though back then in Montgomery, when they realized that they had to get to work on public transportation,
right,
they still realized, to your point, brother, they still realized that the movement was more important than the dollar that I was spending on that public transportation ride.
Stay right there. Go ahead.
And that's exactly what we have to do. We have to transform and transfigure ourselves into thinking that if it's important enough for my grandmama to get in that line and be able to have access to just the basic things of water on a hot day, then it is enough for me to take and make the sacrifice of, you know what, if I can't shop here, if I can't get what I want here, there's so many other places where I can still get that same a product. And look, watch this. It also may start other folk, minorities, African Americans, to compete with that and say, you know what? While Home Depot is over here doing this, you can come on over here. You still can get what you need over here too. So again, that's economic power with your dollar.
Yeah. We pretty much we're the number one consumers. So we have that buying power. I think it is time for us to realize that, and really push Black-owned businesses, really push entrepreneurship. COVID really has shown and opened my eyes, at least in this Atlanta area, that anybody can be an entrepreneur. There's so many Black-owned businesses. I want to say the month of January, just only eating at Black-owned restaurants because I
Wow.
felt that's where I wanted to spend my power. I mean, my money, my economic dollar, and my power. So I think that is an opportunity for us to voice how we feel, not only, being out there protesting, but also hitting them where they hurt with their money, economic dollars. Because this, we understand this world is very capitalistic. It's driven by the dollar. But African Americans need to understand that we have the number one spending power.
And
Send,
go ahead, James. Go ahead.
I was just saying, brother, to that point, send the elevator back down, man. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that should be a movement. If they move it, if they do it in Kentucky, if they do it in all our major cities, send the elevator back down to the next movement so we can get that going. Just my whole thing is send the elevator back down, because once we all get to the top, it's going to benefit all of us as a group of people that are experiencing the suppression. Latino X's, the Asian community, right? The African Americans. Let's not forget about our Native American families, our brothers and sisters. Send that elevator back down so we can start a consistent movement. I think that's when you'll get people's attention, and that's when you'll get actually change.
Now, and it's interesting that you said that. So I want to. So one of the things that's really been on my mind that I've been paying attention to is the fact that women in this day and time, in this movement, and in this plight, have been showing out and showing off, and I mean, really just going to back toe to toe. I think about Stacey Abrams, right? Right, we know Kamala Harris just got the seat that she's sitting in, and that in and of itself is major, right? But then, so I kind of want to shift a little bit. Now we talking about Representative Park Cannon down there in Georgia, where you are, Trey. And I just gotta say, I'm not a violent person. I don't like to fight, right? That's just me. I don't like to physically fight. I can if I have to. You understand what I'm saying? But but I'm not a violent person. And I think, all things considered, when I'm thinking about George Floyd being murdered, I mean, I'm thinking about Breonna Taylor, and now, brothers, I have a little girl now. I got a baby girl, right? That's only 2 months old, who has to live in this world. And so when I'm looking at Representative Park Cannon, I'm thinking about my daughter, who one day will become an adult and hopefully will occupy some office or some place of greatness like that, and she has to live in this world. And like I said, I'm not a violent person, but when I saw that video, all I could say to myself was, ain't no way in the world I could have been there and not got arrested, because that just, as a black man, like I struggle. You know what I'm saying? Looking at a black woman being mishandled, and then the fact that they had the nerve to relate that to what happened on January 6th. I think all kind of atoms and protons and everything within me just wanted to go off, man.
I agree. And to not only that, but I don't know if you guys have been, well, of course you've been following it, but to hear her charges, man, like,
Trumped
they're
up charges.
absurd. They're very, very much absurd. And we still have those who storm the Capitol, are, walking around untouched, unscathed, who are, showing up to their company parties, showing up to company events, still in their leadership positions. But yet here we have someone who only simply wanted to, knock on the door, who, who really, wasn't even causing an insurrection, but someone who really just did not necessarily agree, but took the proper, I guess, didn't take the proper steps, but did it respectfully. I would even say, if we're talking about it in a respectful way. But man, yeah, it blows my mind to see that. It blows my mind because Georgia is number one of the leading states that have women in power, whether they're state representatives or whether they're in high positions, as a Keisha Lance Bottoms, who is the mayor, right, in Atlanta. So, yeah, it blew my mind as well.
I was doing some thinking. One of the things and strategies, because all politics is local, which is real, one of the strategies that I take my hat off to and applaud Sister Abrams for is that she rallied everybody together. But before I get there, one of the things that I'm proud of as an African American, and when I look at my mama and all the young sisters that are coming up, to your point, even the
Mm-hmm.
2 month old,
Mm-hmm.
is this: I'm encouraged that sisters have always been leading the struggles in so many ways,
Yes, they
right?
have. Yes.
We've always had in our community sisters who have always been the bloodstained banner to hold up everything that we feel is just so unjust.
Mm-hmm.
Rosa Parks, Ida B. Wells. I mean, in the Harriet Tubman, and the names go on and on. So the great thing is, this is not unique to us, right?
Right. Right.
But I think, oftentimes, what we do as a people, we'll dress to chill instead of dressing to get into some action, right? We'll
Mm-hmm.
dress to chill, and we can't chill right about now, because chilling is going to get us caught up. But when we actually get involved and active, uh, joining different organizations that's going to perpetuate that particular movement that we're about. And I tell you, one of the things that may scare folk is that when they see us, and I'm just reminded of the march of the Black Lives Matter march for the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. One of the most interesting things is that we have so many numbers of people that see the exact same thing that we see, and they want to be a part of a movement.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a great time, not only for Black businesses to start percolating their heads, but a lot of different movements,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's a lot of movements out there, but I don't think everyone is connected to the same chain. Everybody's doing their own thing. So I prelude that to say, one of the great things I think that can happen in Georgia is, and in the political system in America is, it's not as if we don't know who these politicians are who are trying to suppress the vote that are currently in office now that are Republican, or if they are, you know, Democrats or independents that's not speaking our language. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, what we have to do is, when the time comes for their term to be up, we must be available, willing, and ready to run someone against them.
Yeah. Yeah. And whew, you said a mouthful. And when I think about all of that, man, you said something. You said sometimes we get comfortable. I'm paraphrasing what you said, James. Sometimes we get comfortable and complacent, right? It made me think about when President Obama was in office, right? And even once he completed his 8 years, and you had some folk that were upset that said, "Well, what did he do for black folks? He didn't do nothing for black folks. He did more for the LGBTQ than he did for the African Americans." And so here's my argument to that, or my response to it. My question is, well, when he got elected, I think not long before he was even in office, the LGBTQ, had an agenda that they had. My question is, where was our agenda? Like, did we get complacent when he got in office because he was a man of color in office,
Mhm.
and we had a I guess a spirit of expectation that everything was going to be fixed automatically? Did we fail to give an agenda, right? And if that is the case, do we see that same behavior even now? Dealing with the whole voter suppression thing, with Kamala Harris being in office, now we got Joe Biden in office, and now that Trump's out of office, do you see minorities in some way, shape, or form, African Americans? Is there a sense of complacency now? And what should we be doing now?
I would say I think the pandemic has pretty much messed up a lot of different things, but there are still young activists, young groups who are still on the scene, who are still trying to push this country in the right direction.
Yeah.
As a people, African Americans, I'm not going to go that far. I love my people. I'm not going to go that far to say, that we have gotten complacent, because daily it's a struggle, right?
Yeah.
Daily, I'm literally talking daily. It's a struggle. Seeing from the police brutality, from the educational disparity, from the economical disadvantages that we have as a people. It's a struggle daily. So I wouldn't say or go that far as to say that we've gotten complacent. But do we need more people to step up? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no reason why there are more African American women voting than there are African American men. Not to say that women shouldn't be in their numbers, but men, we need to step up as well, right? They
Right.
shouldn't be the only ones holding up that blood-stained banner. They shouldn't be the only ones on the front lines. They shouldn't be the only ones that are in office. But let us come along our sisters. Let us promote our sisters. Let us encourage them as well, and move us together as a country. But James, you've been hinting to something that I wanted to kind of make mention to this entire conversation, and that is the togetherness or the coming together of all minority groups and people. And I think it's interesting once we pay respect and start to look at the things that Martin Luther King Jr. did. Of course, being here in Atlanta, we begin to look at the things that even Malcolm X did, right? Towards towards the latter time of his life. It was, and not even that, Chairman Fred Hampton, how they were very vocal in identifying a people's struggle and suppression, not just African Americans, not just people in their community, not just people that they seen daily, but it really turned, I guess, the FBI. It really turned J. Edgar Hoover on when it was everybody collective. It was a rainbow. What do you say? Rainbow coalition, right? It was everybody's. So I think that's kind of what we need to do as well, and just start to identify problems that are not just synonymous to African Americans, but are just collectively everyone's problem. Yeah. And now I think move us forward.
If I may say one thing, brother, I'm reminded of something that my grandmama said. She was an old hairdresser from Mississippi. She didn't have a lot of education, but one of the things she said, and this is where, when we put all this together, all of us can participate or jump in the movement. She reminded me, she said, James, you'll be there either to plant the seed, you'll be there to either water the seed, or you'll be there for the harvest, but seldom will you be at all three stages at one time. So my thing is that all of us can be at some stage in this movement, whether it's the watering, whether it's going to be the harvest period, or just putting the seed up in the soil to make it, grow to what we need it to grow to. And I think that's what we need to be moving towards, putting and planting and grooming this movement at different phases, but more importantly, finding out where you fit in the growing of this movement.
That's good.
I love that. I'm gonna have to use that, man. I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for quotes, man. Listen, and you know what? It's always though the good old folk from the South that got the best quotes a lot of times. Hey, look, Trey, you down south, so I'm pretty sure you done came up about a good 25 quotes in your pocket, brother.
Look. Yeah, man. Church mothers, man. I'm church mothers.
That's right.
Yeah. But listen, so look, so one thing that I want to bring note to. So Trey, y'all are in Georgia, and y'all are pretty much the center of attention when it comes to this voter suppression conversation. I feel like Georgia is setting a precedence for other states that are Republican ran, right? And what I mean by that is other states that have Republican governors and are predominantly Republican ran, they're watching what's going on in Georgia so they can pretty much make their move next. Because let me tell you something. Now, James, we up here in the D.C. in the Maryland area, and of course, D.C. got a Democratic mayor and Mary Bowser, right? But right next door, you got Maryland, who has a Republican governor by the name of Larry Hogan. I don't care what nobody say. I feel like Larry Hogan got something up his sleeve too after a while, because I think he watching too, and he finna make his move slowly but sure. Like, he probably been doing okay with the little COVID stuff, but look, a Republican don't change their stripes, in my opinion. I'm just saying. But I feel like do y'all agree that Georgia is really setting the precedence for everybody else, and this is why it's necessary to have this conversation, because it's almost like if one feel like they can do it, and everybody else gonna try to follow the trail.
Absolutely, you were reading my mind. That would be, my question to you all. about, what have you heard as it relates to this moment of suppression, because I know that they won't be the only ones
Right.
to kind of try to institute
Absolutely
some
not.
some form of voting law to change, the president, or change the way in which people came out in numbers in their particular states. But yeah, Georgia, and this is new to me as well. Just being newly here, only being here a year, Atlanta and Georgia in itself, they're trendsetters.
Right.
They're very much trendsetters, very much trendsetters. They call this, the Black Hollywood, because people come here and they have an opportunity that's not afforded to them in other places, be it New York, be it California, or even be it DC, right?
Right.
While there is, I'm born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, and went to school in DC. While there is afforded opportunities for them, yeah, Atlanta is very much like no other. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It very much wouldn't surprise me. Even our neighbor next door, Alabama. I know they have or have been changing lately, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me what the Republicans might do in that state as well.
James.
Yeah, I think to your point, Trey, Alabama has an amazing system, and I think it may even percolate and spread on over to Alabama in terms of this movement from Georgia. I'm reminded of there's a mayor in Montgomery, Alabama. That
Mm-hmm.
brother is doing amazing things. He's very on top of it with COVID. When I was watching the whole COVID piece,
Right.
he speaks very well. Brother is, I think his name is Stephen Reed. Brother Stephen Reed. He is, I think that's him. Yeah, the brother is very well spoken. I think he is one of the up and coming politicians, and I
Mm-hmm.
think linking similar issues from the South. Because see, now it's a thing where a lot of the similar issue pieces starting to come in. The same thing that's affecting Georgia ain't different from Alabama, ain't different from Mississippi, and so on and so on. So I think where you have a lot of the up and coming stormtroopers, as I like to call it, in Stephen Reed and the other brothers in your mayor down there in Atlanta, Stacey Abrams. I think where there is a unity, a focus on what that movement is down there in the Deep South, man, it would be no different than the invention of the cotton gin. Because when that cotton gin was made, everybody benefited.
Right.
When we get that cotton gin together with the up and coming African American, and you may have some Latinos out there that we don't know about. But once we get that cotton gin going, it's going to be a new transformation of the Deep South in terms of politics. I really believe that will be the new cotton gin. Because, and I say the cotton gin because if you remember, slavery was all about money, producing. And at the time, Black folk in slavery made up that cotton gin. But when the cotton gin became real successful, they transformed and transitioned African Americans to different parts of the field, right? Plow that mule a little bit more, tend to that land. So my thinking is that the whole idea of a cotton gin movement, get that cotton gin down there in that Deep South, in that Georgia, Alabama, maybe even some of that parts of Florida. You get that cotton gin mentality going down there, and it will start a totally different movement, I think, in politics. And I think that's what a lot of people may be afraid of.
Yeah, and I agree. And to everybody that's watching, we're talking about this whole voter suppression piece. Really pay attention, no matter where you are, whether you in Georgia, Florida's about to be next. I'm telling you, Florida about to do some stuff, right? Florida finna show off in a little bit. I mean, and so really pay attention to what's going on in your local and respective states and your cities. Because let me tell you something. White supremacy ain't playing no games. And I think about and James, you and I had a conversation about him last week when we talked. But I think about folk like Dr. Greg Carr out of Howard. He calls he calls the Republican Party the white nationalist party. And so and listen. One thing about the Republicans, between the Republicans and Democrats, Republicans They have no shame in what their intent is. They don't care about playing fair. When they got power, they know how to yield it. They know how to wield it. They know how to fling it around. They know how to sling it. And and a lot of times when Democrats get in office and they get power, they want to be fair. We talking about this filibuster. We talking about the different things that need to get passed in Congress. And they're watching. They're watching to see how Democrats are going to yield their power. They're watching to see how they're going to respond, right? And so not only that, now we didn't had the conversation that yes, we get it. Voter suppression is happening, and it's happening quick, fast, and in a hurry, right? And it's happening very fast before our eyes. But the question is, what do we do now? Okay, so now in Georgia, right? And so I was reading an article. They made it a misdemeanor punishable by up to a year in jail to give away food or water to voters standing in line within 150 feet of the outer edge of a polling place or within 25 feet of any voter. So now that they didn't change the law, right? Okay, so let's say hypothetically we don't get that change, right? Let's say that law is in effect for the next, I don't know what, hypothetically 5 to 10 years. How do we work around that, and how do we move forward, and what do we do now? So now that we know they're trying to suppress the vote, what do we do, right? And so Trey, I want you to answer that first, because I'm pretty sure that y'all are thinking of ways now, because this can hit y'all first pretty much, and then James, I'm gonna go to you after that.
Absolutely, yeah. We've already been meeting, of course, to talk about ways in which we can get around, some of these newer laws. Of course, as I mentioned before earlier on, just knowing the distance, knowing the restrictions and where you can set up and where you can't set up, knowing what you can say, who you can say it to, and the
Right.
different things of that nature. But also, not only that, but kind of trying to find ways to combat some of these laws, right? And what I mean by that is getting people to understand, hey, you have X amount of days or X amount of time to get your vote in. So really pushing forward to that. That will, subside all of these election rules, all of these different laws that are coming out, right? But I understand that some people, may have to work, because I just mentioned this is just a very suppressive
Yeah.
state and area. But yeah, we've been meeting to kind of find ways in which we can kind of help the people, and that's the biggest thing. Just finding ways to help the people. And I also want to just throw out there really quickly and just salute HBCUs who have been doing a phenomenal job with producing leaders of the next generation, right? And they're in this corridor of down south. Um, so that's another way as well, right? The infrastructures that we have as African Americans, whether it be our HBCUs, whether it be our churches, finding ways to kind of just educate our people. And I think that will kind of move us forward. And those are some of the next steps that we're doing in the Georgia Democratic Party. And those are also some next steps that I'm doing in my local church and community.
James, go to you.
Respect. So you two brothers are members of the cloth. I respect that. So what I'm about to say, you guys can probably relate to, and this pretty much has to be part of the movement. In Proverbs, it has the phrase of eating the fruits of their words. So there are laws that they're trying to put in place to suppress the vote.
Yeah.
So Christians, lottie dottie, and everybody have to make sure that they eat the fruit of their words. So if that means that they're no more, or there's a restriction on the ballot, then to your point, Trey, then we have to work around that. We have to go up to the line without crossing it. Exactly. If they're trying to prevent the water pail to be in line, then Mama and Daddy, Uncle Susan, Bucky, Shaquina, we just gonna have to drink it before we get there, or
Right.
I'm gonna have it ready for you as soon as you get out of that zone that is restricted. So my point is that while they do have the laws, I do believe that it's going to turn its head upside down, because those restrictions, it's only going to force, which I hope it does, it's only going to force more people to vote even more so. And see, one of the things that Republicans fail to realize is that, and I realize this, I have an 8-year-old son, right? So he has 8 more years, what, 10 more years before he's 18.
Right.
And he's saying this, right? So every 18-year-old, every 17-year-old right now, 16-year-old that's about to turn 18, we have to encourage them and get them into the participation of doing the vote piece, of being part of the political process. Who knows, we may have future leaders even in those cyclones to move us forward. But you can't take for granted, I believe, the young votes that are up and coming, that see it in front of their eyes what's going on. And watch this. There were a lot of young white partners in crime with in white folk that were out there voting with us too, and they're young too. So they see it too. So, we have to, at this point, because of this movement, we cannot be isolated as one group, but understanding the mission of us all. But let me say this. I do believe that we can work collectively on a lot of common issues, at the same time maintaining what's important and dear to what our community stands for and what we need.
Right. Right. One of the things, as y'all were talking, I've been thinking about this the last couple of days, because I was like, okay, now they done made certain things a misdemeanor, and well, how can we overcome that? Without losing a great deal of the black vote, the minority vote in upcoming elections. And so Trey, you and I, like Jane said, you and I, we are men of the cloth, we preachers, right? And so one of the things that I thought about, the church has to now play a part in this.
Yeah.
Right. The church has to play a part in this, because now what happens is we have to be able to participate. If that means, hey, whatever voting place, whatever place you got to go vote, the church that's closest by, right? The church that's closest by, you have care packages. You have care packages to where people can go and pick up, how we have care packages for the pandemic and things of that nature. We got food packages. People can pick up food packages on the way. Get you a plastic bag with a sandwich or two in it, a water bottle, a juice, a soda, something in it, to where people can pick up on the way. So you ain't got to worry about unnecessarily putting your people or putting people of color at risk of getting arrested, and then there'll be a big distraction the day of voting, when it's time to vote, because guess what, folk them picked up their own care packages, their own food packages on the way, right? And so what you gonna tell them, they can't eat in line now? Okay, well we'll just eat before we get in line, we'll eat when we in the car or whatever, or we take turns in line or what have you. We have to be very strategic about how we're going to do this, because if they gonna turn up the volume in terms of how they gonna suppress the vote, then we gotta turn up the volume of our intellect, of our strategies, of how we finna go about doing this, because they're not gonna stop, so therefore we can't stop, man. If we are gonna walk around defeated and say, okay, well, they done made the law, then it is what it is, I mean, there's a such thing as MLK said, it's civil disobedience in many different ways. And civil disobedience can come in many different ways, and that's just one way that the church can play a role. But part of the problem is some folk that belong to the church don't feel like they have a role in this thing called social justice or this thing called politics. That is, until it come to their doorstep. You know what I'm saying? So and when I think about it, even from a theological aspect, Jesus was political.
Very much so.
When he was going up against the Pharisees and the Sadducees, he was very much political, right? And probably when he was taking care of the poor, looking after the poor, making sure they were taken, care of and not being taken advantage of. That's political. That's social, right? And so, in some ways, some folk can argue. In some ways, I feel like Jesus was a socialist. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he wanted those that didn't have to be able to have. He understood that the reality was there was the haves and the have-nots, but he was trying to, make sure that them have-nots, they were taken care of. If you were being taken advantage of, he was there for you. He was on your side trying to support you and trying to support, and I think a lot of times we miss that theologically, Trey. I think we miss that theologically, but I don't know, what you think about that part, but, that's just where I sit with it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And this is an opportunity for churches really to step up and be a precinct, a polling place as well. My church, before I got here, they were a polling place, but of course, like I said, due to COVID,
Yeah.
we have an older demographic, so it wouldn't be smart for us to be a polling place this
Right.
year.
Makes
But
sense.
yeah, but some of these pastors who are listening to us, man, look into it and see how your church can be a polling place. Look and see how your church can be um, a resource to its community. Some people literally have to drive to the nearest school or the nearest government official building, which is miles and miles from them. Whereas though the local church is literally blocks walking distance for some of these people. So I encourage and I employ some of these pastors who are listening. Yeah, please look into how your church can be a resource and be a polling place for the next year. I mean, for the next elections or for the years to come.
Now, one more thing before I let you brothers go, because all the three of us, we're three black African American men in America. Just briefly, I don't know if y'all have been watching, but I've been watching this Derek Chauvin trial, and I just wanted to get y'all thoughts on it briefly before we close out the show. Because I think the last couple of months have been just a wake up call for me in many different ways. And by us quarantining, I've been able to sit home and really reflect and really, evaluate some things mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I watched the police footage yesterday from the body cam, and we were able to hear things that we couldn't hear before because all we had was footage. And let me tell you something. The tears that I had to shed yesterday just watching that police footage, y'all. Y'all thoughts before we close the show out. Go ahead. I'm gonna start with you first, James.
I think that I agree with you, brother. I think that what I saw is the same thing that you saw, and I think the same thing that everybody saw. That it's not about whether the brother had any substance opioids in his body. It matters not that the brother may or may not have thought he had a counterfeit $20 bill. It matters not that uh, you know they couldn't fit him in the car. I'm gonna give him that. Okay, they couldn't fit him in the car, but the brother said he was he had a
Claustrophobic.
phobia. He was claustrophobic. He had a phobia about him. And I'm reminded when I was younger, when on the playground, when the young girls would sometimes be surrounded around bees or something like that, the first instinct is to scream and to run away. I'm afraid of heights. So, when you get me up on a roller coaster, although I love them, but if we stay at the top, I'm screaming too. So I think it's a thing where we have to look at it for what it is. Was the pressure, was the detainment, wasn't a was would a this is the law piece of it. Would a reasonable person, would a reasonable police officer, right, in that same situation do that same thing to a man that's a human, right? And if your answer is no, then you must find or rule on the side of this guy being guilty. Now, I understand sometimes we can see the same thing and come down with the different result, but at some point in our humanness, outside of race, in our humanness, was this brother's life really, was it really respected in a way that we can actually say, all those people that saw this was wrong? Because see, this is the other thing too. Those people that saw this, they gonna need trauma. They gonna need therapy, man. They saw this with their own eyes,
Yeah.
and they were reliving that in the courtroom. Everybody knows. See, this is the thing that I challenge my white brothers and sisters with. Y'all, when something like this happens, we gotta call it what it is.
Yeah.
Wrong is wrong. We can't put lipstick on a pig and call it something else. It's a pig. So therefore, I just hope, at least with all of this evidence coming out, and let me give the benefit of the doubt. The defense has their other side to present as well. But when it boils down to it, brothers, it really comes down to a thing of, was the squeeze worth that juice? Was it worth taking the brother's life over all of this? Did we have to squeeze it that much? That's all I got to say.
Before, Trey, before you go, Trey, one thing I thought about James as you spoke, man, it's amazing because in America, America has more respect for dogs than they do the value of a black life. You can't even put your knee on the neck of a dog in America, but yet it's okay to put your knee on the neck of a
Peter,
black man.
put it like this, to your point, and I'm gonna just say this. Michael Vick caught hell for them thinking that he was playing. He didn't even have nothing to do with the
Dog
dog.
fight.
Michael Vick caught hell.
They was ready to give him the chair.
To your point. To your point. He lost out on money, on contracts, on being a successful person. He finally, got over this, but look at what he had to go through, man. So to your point, is well taken on that. We do. We'll groom him. We'll pet him. Hell, we even have a group of people that have come out to determine whether you whether you're violating their rights.
Yeah. Go.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Trey.
It's very much surprising to look at that parallel. The fact that we've even got there as a society. But nonetheless, man, I told my wife, I think it was yesterday, so I didn't get a chance to look at anything today, but I told my wife yesterday that this literally should be an open and shut case.
A shut case, yeah.
Literally should be an open and shut case, right? From, of course, the way in which everyone who is testifying is blatantly, expressing that they've witnessed a murder. Like that's let's call it what it is. They witnessed a murder. So yeah, it places America once again on this balancing beam, right? On this balancing beam. Like where are we? Where are we as a society? If he gets off, if there are no repercussions, we have to literally turn and question ourselves. After this moment, there will be uprising, there will be riots, there will be, there will be all of these things that come afterwards. But it's really up to the American people to make that and render their decision. And I just pray that it's in their favor, because I'm looking at it, I'm watching it, I'm seeing the evidence. I'm just like, man, how could it not? But I also want to say that it is an awesome thing, because I was reading an article. I'm a reader. I was looking at an article that mentioned how these larger trials are being publicized in order to kind of help the American people see if justice is being served. Right. So no longer are there closed courtrooms. No longer are there, just closed and private trials, but they're actually intensifying the way in which we're seeing these things turn out to be. So I do look at that as a positive and say, hopefully, justice is rendered based on that aspect, that the world is watching, that everybody is paying attention. I'm taking a look to see what's going on. But yeah, man, I just believe that it should be an open and shut case. And if it's not, as Malcolm X said, chickens are coming home to roost.
Well, there you have it. Trey Daniels and Brother James Brooks, thank y'all so much, man. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today. And listen, man. We gonna have to do this again. I especially want to continue this conversation about Derek Chauvin and really dig into that some more once we see some more of the trial in the upcoming week. So I'm gonna have to do like an impromptu show. So I want y'all to hang tight. Matter of fact, Trey, we might even got to get your brother on here too, man, because I didn't see you in school. You was always quiet, to me in my opinion. Like I always seen you in passing. But
I'm just observant, man.
Yeah, but you and your brother, y'all got a lot to say, man. Y'all got a lot to say. And so I would definitely love to get the both of y'all, and James is gonna have you come back too, and just have like a black man session and just chop this up, because this affects us, because it could have been either one of us. You know what I'm saying? At any given time, at any given situation, that could have been one of us. Asking and begging and pleading to get a knee off of our necks. And I always say this, that We always talk about lethal injection. George Floyd was killed by lethal injection. All right.
That's deep. That's deep.
Trey Daniel, James Brooks. I'm gonna close the show out. Y'all hang to the side for me, okay? Thank you so much for coming
Thank you,
on.
brother.
Let me close the show out, and then I'm gonna chat with y'all briefly, okay? So there you have it, people. There you have it. I want to thank my guests. I want to thank James and Trey for coming on to the show and really being a part of this show, a needed topic that we had. We were talking about voter suppression. Prayers to Trey because he's on the ground in Georgia dealing with the folk and dealing with our people who are trying to navigate and figure things out. And you got brother James who's up here with me in the DMV looking at the news and really trying to bring awareness and bring this to you. So I definitely want to thank the both of them. Listen, do me a favor, like, tag, share, and subscribe. Listen, share this broadcast, hit the share button, and do me a favor, tag at least 5 people in this video, okay? Tag at least 5 people. And like I said, we got some awesome shows coming up, y'all. We got some awesome shows. The next show I got coming up, I'm going to be talking to Reverend Jessica Mitchum, and she's going to be talking with me about childhood trauma and how it manifests in behaviors. Okay, so April 9th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. right here on Facebook Live, Turn Up the Volume podcast. We're going to be talking about that. Then I got a brother, a theologian that I truly and highly respect by the name of Pastor David Richardson. We're going to be talking about tithing. So many misconceptions and so many things about that particular subject, y'all. My show is known to literally be a show that's kind of controversial. And so, I mean, I don't make it controversial, just because I want to be controversial. But hey, we talk about it. Nothing is off limits on my show. So, y'all, we got some awesome shows coming up. We definitely gonna have Trey and James come back, and we're gonna talk about some stuff, some black men stuff. Okay, that's really gonna, really shake some stuff. But like I said, y'all, listen. I'm Donte Carroll. Do me a favor and follow me on Facebook at Donte J. Carroll Sr. right there. You can also follow me on Twitter. I'm getting on Twitter and I'm on there pretty much every day now. So at Donte J. Carroll, follow me on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram right there at Donte Carroll, all one word, no apostrophe, no space. And you also want to follow me on YouTube at Donte Carroll right there, no apostrophe. And lastly, listen, I just updated my website yesterday, y'all. So y'all go check out my website, www.DonteCarroll.com. Y'all know I'm a writer. I got books out. Y'all go cop my books. Do what you got to do. Like, share, and share, tag, subscribe, all of that stuff. Shout out to my wife, who's very supportive, Lamika Carroll. Love you, darling. I know she upstairs. And my baby girl's probably giving her a field day right now. But I'm coming up there soon after a while. But listen, do me a favor. Happy Holy Week. We coming up, for those who are saved, sanctified, Holy Ghost filled. Tomorrow is Good Friday. Have a good Friday. Have a good Resurrection Sunday. And until next week, keep that volume turned up. Peace, be blessed. And James and Trey, y'all stay tuned. Stay on the side until I can finish closing out. Be blessed. See y'all next week.